If
This
you
conference will now be recorded.
if you remember me from last time, my name is Joe Mancuso, CEO of Workuments. Okay, and I brought Angela Brimage. Okay, here she's director of HRIS for the Clyde's Restaurant Group. When we Nova asked me an interesting thing. He said, "Could you bring somebody to the table who's worked with your software?" And so I thought nobody better than Angela. She's been with us, for a period of time, and no longer with us. I thought that would be the most interesting person, someone that had to leave, okay? And because their company was purchased by a private equity firm, and she was able to put it off for a while, having to switch, but finally forced them to switch, and she can go into that part too. But I thought, Angela, in introducing you, I thought we might start with, the selection process. Like, how did you choose us in the first place? Workuments.
Of course. So before, um, we had Clyde's, we had everything done by paper. We didn't have an HRIS system. We started to look for, growth and the ability to do everything electronically. And we hired a firm to go out and find us different systems to monitor or to review. One of the systems, we had 3 systems that passed the screening to bring in for an in-person presentation. And I can't remember the first one, but they really were not what we were looking for. The second one was Workuments, and they came in and, basically just said part of the spiel is, whatever you need, we can do, which when you hear, you go, okay, right. It's not very believable. But we really got into it and, looked into what we were looking for since we didn't have a system in place. We were allowed to say, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? We want to be able to have a logbook. We want to be able to do timekeeping. We want employees to be able to, have notifications in it. And they said, yes, we can do everything. We then went to ADP and we listened to their spiel, which we had payroll with ADP. And they were great, but they were, the way I look at this is that, Workuments is very customizable, or ADP is very customizable. You can see a box and, say you want this data to be in this box, but it's a box. Where Workuments was more configurable. Like, what if you didn't want a box? What if you wanted a sphere? What if, we weren't allowed to make many changes in ADP. Every time we asked, could we do this? Could we do this? They said no. So we figured, why not go to, a system that we could start from the bottom up and build. So that's kind of how we came into Workuments, because we loved the fact that anything we wanted, it was configurable. We had input in how it was set up. We were allowed to figure out, what we wanted for our restaurant business, which is, we have salaried employees, hourly employees, part-time, full-time. The ability to configure what we needed was very important to us.
Angela, so when we came in there, you had about 2,000 employees or so, okay? And how did the implementation work? For example, like, what was the time frame for it? Was it done in pieces?
Yeah, for the data itself, again, Workuments created a file that, went to ADP, and ADP and Workuments were able to talk through this file. And so we imported all the data from our, current payroll system, and it all uploaded directly into Workuments, and we were able to verify data. It was very quick. Like, I don't remember the exact time, but it was not, it was a couple months to figure out what we wanted, or a couple weeks to figure out what we wanted, but the actual bringing in of the data was very quick. Just to get the employee data in. And then, we over time took our paper folders and we were allowed to upload them into the employees' files. Things that we wanted signatures on that we didn't want on paper, we were able to send to the employees, once we had them integrated in, which was great. But we uploaded everything from ADP.
And then, like, later on, if you wanted to make changes, let's say go out 6 months, a year, or whatever, how did that work?
I either sent an email to Sabre or Misha or someone, someone on the team and said, this is what I want. And what was great is, starting this relationship, we started with the employees and then we added logbook and the logbook, I mean, I miss that. I still have people, we switched to Workday and just the logbook is one of the things that we miss the most because of how well it integrated with HR, to be able to link employees and, assign, good things that they're doing, bad things that they're doing, be able to keep, track of a daily basis of what was going on in the restaurants. So we added different things over time, and anytime we just said, hey, we're looking for this, after a couple months, it was great because it was, well, you're looking for this, but what about this? Did you consider this? Like Workuments is it's not only that they gave us what we needed, is over time they grew to know our company so that we were allowed to have these discussions of, well, how about this instead? And there was a lot of times that what we thought we wanted, we ended up not doing the exact way because of the feedback, because Workuments said, hey, we're beginning to understand you as a company and what you're looking for, which was fantastic because, again, starting from nothing is wonderful, but it's also, difficult because you don't have something to begin with. So all we did was send an email and say, hey, we're looking for this, and it was done. It was done quickly. I don't think I ever waited more than, I think the biggest integration that we did was for the EI9s. And I think that was a huge integration. And imagine it being with ADP and the I9 system. And I think that took less than a month. And that was the biggest integration that we had. But most things were within a day, within a couple days.
And so in talking about that, how about like a service request? Let's say there was something you needed, it was an emergency, whatever. How did that work?
I would send an email to, support@workuments.com, and, I became trained that I would put there, hey, this is urgent in the subject. And if it was urgent, I heard back from someone within an hour or two, which is not typical from any HR system I have seen. If I said, hey, I need this within a few days, it was within a few days. If I need it within a week, it was within a week. I never had an issue that was an emergency. We didn't have a lot of emergencies, which is great. But the few things that we needed for compliance issues that became an emergency, they're not emergencies because the system's not working. It was, oh my gosh, DC did this. We have to get this paper signed now. This has to happen. Those things were acknowledged, answered, and fixed within hours.
And okay, so let's talk about that just for a second. So what are some of the things in Workuments that you kind of missed that you took advantage of that helped you guys with the TRAs, whatever, the communication, whatever, just as examples?
Of course. Now the biggest thing that our old VP of HR and recruitment that we had was, we have a lot of hourly employees that have to clock in and clock out. And in the service industry and in any industry, if someone forgets to clock out or someone forgets to clock in, you have a manager that's going in and adjusting the time. And we used to have these little pieces of paper that we'd have the employees sign that said, hey, I agree that, Bob can change my in time from 9 o'clock to 8 o'clock, or my out time instead of midnight, I actually left at 10. So there was all these little pieces of paper that we had to chase after, because legally you can't change someone's time without their permission. I mean, it's just not, there's lots of lawsuits that this can happen. And we were sued a few times in the past for this. Workman's came up the way, and I've never seen this before, where when an employee clocked in, any adjustment that a manager made would pop up on the screen and say, Angela changed your time from 8 to 9 o'clock. Do you approve? And the employee would just click yes. It would acknowledge the receipt on the back end that the employee acknowledged by fingerprint that they agreed with that time change. And that was life altering for managers, for myself, for the VP of HR, the ability to have a system track time changes, time change approvals. So that was a huge one for us. Another one that so that we we do not have anymore. So that was a big loss for us. And the other one is, we have the wage acknowledgement form for DC. So anytime you have a rate change, the employee has to go in and see the rate, acknowledge that that is the rate. In Alexandria and Loudoun County, we have the, health acknowledgements and agreements that employees had to sign at one point. There's just items that you need employees to either sign, acknowledge, or, just send to employees. And Workuments allowed me to do that. I had control of that. So if I needed something signed off on, I could upload it into the system and I could select who it went to. It could be all salaried employees, all hourly employees, all tipped employees, all employees in DC. Pretty much any which way I wanted to send it out, I could, and I could get this done within an hour. So for compliance purposes, this was amazing. I mean, just to be able to date stamp something saying I, sent this out at this time to our employees. Where right now in the system that we're in, I had a form that should have gone out January 1st, and it just went out 2 days ago. Because I don't have the ability to send it to the employees anymore. It's a ticket that I have to create that has to go through, an approval process, and it can't be sent out by me. So for compliance reasons, the ability to take something and send it out was huge for us. And again, it could happen in a PDF, which I needed help with, and I would create a ticket and say, hey, I need this DC form to be created, and I want you to autofill the name, the address, the social, autofill the compensation, autofill, the manager, and then have the employee sign it, and it was possible. So when this was sent out to the employees, they were able to look at it and say, that's my name, that's my address, that's my social, so the system's matched, and then they could sign and it was done. So that was those are two huge things for us. That we lost, which I'm feeling the pain for it now.
And like, so let's say after a year, whatever time, I don't know exact time dates, whatever, but let's say, we've been working in the system, you told us initially how you wanted the process to work, but, you wanted to change something, or now that you're in there and you're working with it, you guys come up with some new ideas, or maybe we have to give you a new app because there's something going on there. How did that work?
It was easy. Again, it was just opening up a ticket, and I mean, I can sit here and say, they got to the tickets fast. I mean, anyone who's trying to get you to use their system are going to say, hey, we will get back to you soon. And I was never a believer, but I can tell you just in real experience, it was fast. Like if you put a ticket in, you received a response that day. Even if you didn't put, if it was urgent or non-urgent, if you just submitted a ticket, you get an answer that day. And it is, what do you want? What are you looking for? Like another one was that we asked for, and we didn't know what we wanted. We just said, hey, we want to keep track of our, elevator licensing. How would we do this? Like, could we figure something out to keep track of all of our licensings? Because trying to keep it in a binder is very difficult. There's not a reminder. And again, it's a compliance issue. So Workuments came up with something called the expiration manager for us. We were able to go in and put in all of our licensings, business licensing, employee, their ABRA license. If someone went through, a safety certification, we could put that in the system, and we could put expiration dates on it to where it would notify the employee and their manager that, hey, your ABRA license is going to expire in 3 months. You need to, look into getting that done. For, an elevator license or a liquor license, which is very important, it would you would input it, and the copy would be in the system, and then the system, you would put an expiration date and then a time frame of when you want to be notified as a reminder and who you want to be notified. So I was able to put in, let's just say, for example, our liquor license, and I could say when it's 6 months from expiring, I need you to notify the president, the VP of food and beverage, and myself. And I want you to notify us every week from 6 months, 5 months, 4 months, and then every day once you hit 3 months. Like, it was so I could control when the notifications were sent out. I could control who they went to. I could go in and say, hey, the VP of food and beverage is taking a, month-long vacation. I could go in and add someone else for that time period so that it wouldn't slip through the cracks if I needed to. So that was just one. We didn't know we needed an expiration manager. We had an idea that we wanted something to keep track of, our employee tip cards. And then it turned into a robust system that we were allowed to use for much more than we had originally thought. For our training, we do a lot of in-house training. We were allowed to put all of our training into that as well. And all this stuff is reportable. The big one too for Workuments is that I was able to run reporting on pretty much anything. Any field you'd want, I could customize ad hoc a report. Now, if I wanted to be a little fancy and I wanted, something that I couldn't do in an ad hoc report, I submitted a ticket and said, this is the report I'm looking for. These are the fields I need. And this is when I would need it by. They would create it for me. And then I could take that report and say, hey, I want it run for me every Monday afternoon. The report would automatically come to my email. I could say, I want this report to run every Tuesday afternoon and I want it to go to this group of people. I could do that as well. And again, it was something that I was able to do that I didn't have to create a ticket for. And again, my time creating tickets sometimes is, you have to wait to follow up on them in other systems. Where here, there's a lot that I was able to do on my own because the system is very easy to use and it's very user friendly.
Well, and how does it compare? Okay, so let's talk about that right now. How does reporting work now with Workday compared to what you use with us?
Well, so Workday has I would probably compare them a lot to ADP. They have a lot of reports that are already built. They're already built to the current, they're built to Graham Holdings and what they have. So I don't have any reports that are Clyde's configured unless I ask for those reports. I can't create my own reports. I can adjust current ones if I find a report that that's not for me, I can sometimes go in and adjust it, but there's not an ability to really ad hoc a report. And the reports it's just not user friendly for me. It's not, I can submit a ticket and, I've been told there's a couple of reports that I can't have. They're just not, they don't have them. But there's not a way to have them because of how our company's set up with tipped. And Clyde's is very complicated. We have tipped employees, non-tipped employees, part-time employees, hourly employees, salary employees. We have weighted overtime employees. We are a very, it's complicated. So reporting, I definitely miss on being able to just grab a report that has the fields that I need. Because another issue that I run into is I can run an employee detail report, but the detail report has, let's say 60 columns on it. I have to go in and filter and sort and delete and remove. So even a report that I can use, it's not usable for me and I can't change it. So reporting is not as easy as it was. But again, I've only been in for 4 months and I have not figured out the way to do it. It's not as easy.
Well, and so what was the transition like? Okay, so I guess two parts to this. One is, how did we treat you? How did that work in leaving? And then number two, what's it been like comparatively?
You guys were great with us leaving. There's always a hesitation of, you build a great relationship with someone and you go, well, we're breaking up. How is this going to be? Is there going to be, are we going to get the same level of support since we're leaving? And we had the same level of support until the day we left. And even when we said, hey, we need to extend it for another month, we were allowed to extend for another month. And then we were like, well, do we need to extend it for another month? And it was very nice to be able to work with someone who said, well, yeah, we can extend it. We're not going to just, drop you. And even on the last day, our account was supposed to close at midnight, and I emailed the team at like 11:50 and said, shoot, I forgot this report. I cannot believe I forgot this report. And the next day they gave it to me. So even after the system was supposed to close, I was still getting help.
What's okay?
With Workday, we
Yeah.
are for employees. So with Workuments, as the director of HRIS, I was able to help employees with passwords, to help reset them. I was able to do a lot with employees. Our managers, for a restaurant business, and I don't know how it is for everyone else's business, but for restaurant business, if you have a manager on the floor, they are the manager for everyone in that restaurant who is hourly. But they might not be the manager of, say the front waiters or say the host. With Workday, if you are not the manager of a group of employees, you can't see their phone number. You can't see their email address. And this is very frustrating for us because now I have to print out a paper, an Excel spreadsheet that I can email to the managers of everyone's phone numbers, which I feel like is taking a step back in time. Where my clouds, I could sit there, you can say, hey, I want every manager to be able to see every hourly employee's phone number. So that's a big one, just that and alone. I know it sounds simple, but the fact that our managers and chefs can't see all hourly, our salaried people can't see our hourly phone numbers, it's caused some frustrations. Employees, if they have an issue of logging in, I can't help them anymore. They have to go to Workday and call and get a support ticket and wait for them, to have the password be reset. It's not as everything's a business process in Workday. The business processes you're not allowed to, you can't really change because it's on one system. So if I want my GMs to, I can't have my general manager see all the pay stubs for their people on their team because managers at other companies can't. So I can't create like a special rule for this, where in Workuments I could. Workuments I could say, hey, I want anyone who's named Elizabeth to be able to see every other person in the company whose name's Elizabeth's phone number. I mean, it was that you could be that specific in Workuments, where in Workday you can't. You can't give someone, special permissions. Like right now, if we have a manager that goes out due to being sick or takes a week-long vacation, I can't just say, hey, give so-and-so temporary permissions at this location to assist, where I could in Workuments. So everything's just much more tied down. There's not a lot of wiggle room, which, in HR, you could look at it as a good thing or a bad thing, but for us, it's not allowed a lot of our staff to be able to do what they need to do.
Hey, Angela.
Yeah.
I think now, Nov, and I'm going to hand it over to him to ask some or direct some questions to you, if that's okay.
Of course.
Okay.
And as thank you, Joe, and this is Nov and Angela. Thank you very. Being a consultant, I'd love to have clients like yourself raving about the services. No, but that is wonderful. I want to kind of walk you through a little bit of a process, because I think for the audience's benefit, really what we've seen in the presentation that Joe has done for us is that really, to your point, you tell me what you need and I'll build it, and it's there, and it's got flexibility, it's got, shall we say, it's got your touch, it's got the company's brand on how we do things a little easier. And many of us in the audience have been working with Workday and other systems of that nature. So I'm kind of curious from the perspective, as you moved from, using, let's say, I suspect you were using Workforce Now in the ADP world, and you continue
Correct.
to use the payroll side of that, but in a sense, you've divorced yourself from using the HR side and use that within the Workuments world. So I guess my question is, having used another system, you've got a sense of the kind of processes that are the normal HR processes. The idea of, I've got a new hire coming in, maybe I've got a tie-in. I gather you may have had other systems in place other than just ADP, like maybe a recruiting system or learning system and all that? Is that kind of a good perspective of how you looked at it, or was it strictly ADP?
Well, we had ADP for payroll, and in Workuments we had some of our learning there. Like we were allowed to do assessments in Workuments. Again, this was
Okay.
something that I didn't know we needed, but for our bartenders, you have to complete an exam with 100%, like the
Yep.
the cocktails of the season, and we were allowed to put in, training videos for those drinks, and then we were allowed to send an assessment out that they would take, and if they got 100%, their manager was notified that they could take the practical test. So we used Workuments for learning. We also used Workuments for recruiting. We used obviously Glassdoor when it was Glassdoor, LinkedIn, and we've used all sorts of companies to get people in, but we did all of our onboarding. We had people, we had Workuments push out to Indeed. Like Workuments was allowed to push out our jobs into Indeed, so we did use them for recruitment as well.
Okay. So what we're really struggling with, and I'll be very honest with you, Workuments represents, in my mind, a very different approach to building a system. To your point about the Workday, the vendor comes and here's our processes. Let's move the data in there. Let's do a little configuration so it looks a little more like what you want, but can't change a whole lot of stuff. And so in a sense, you're kind of adopting a set of requirements, whereas Workuments is like a blank canvas. And so the question becomes, did you see this as an opportunity to really change up both not only processes, but really the whole automation of HR? In other words, the restaurant business is already a very dynamic, high turnover situation, lots of movement and so on. Did you use this, or did you see Workuments as giving you great advantages? And maybe this story about the bartender test is probably a really good example of that. I'm curious about your perspective of going into this without, like a blank canvas. I can do anything I want. What is it I need to have done best?
Well, the great thing with that is if you already have an HR system in place, you can tell Workuments, like, this is how we have it right now, and we want to mimic this, and they could. We also kept the building of the system at a very high level. There was only 4 of us who, while we did go out and get input from the managers, it didn't turn into 40 or 50 people building a system, which can make it, you're right, if we had, having an open system could be very difficult if you have lots of people's input going to how to build it, but we kept it on such a high level. I think there was only 3 or 4 of us that truly made the decisions of how the system was going to be set up. The great thing there is once you set it up and it was running, if you wanted to go, hey, there's this one, and Workuments is also a business process. We created the business process. We said if a salaried manager received a raise, it went to the, vice president of, or it went to the ADO, or it went to so-and-so. If an hourly person received a raise, it went to the GM for final approval, just to make sure that there were checks and balances in place. So Workuments we created all business processes in Workuments, which is great. There's flexibility there, so every business process doesn't have to be the same. Where in this system right now, it's great. Or Workday Workday says this is the business process for this group of people, but the issue is that now my ADOs and now certain people are getting. I have right now, I think 462 notifications in Workday of things that have happened that it has to alert me. So it all becomes kind of white noise. So now I have to go in and go, hey, like, you didn't approve this and you should have approved this. We're Workuments, I could say, hey, this process, I want to go to the GM, but this process, the GM doesn't need to know. Or maybe it's just an email to the GM. They don't need to approve it. So again, Workuments is a business process system. You just get to create those processes to what makes sense for your company and for your location. It could be by location too. If one location needed this, but another location needed that, you could do it. Not that you need to, you can keep it all the same. It's on, it's up to you, but you have that option, which was great.
and I have to say, Angela, I love your style because I've never heard anybody talk about the notification as white noise. But I can imagine if you're in acknowledgement on all this stuff and you've got this population, it's going to clutter up your dashboard faster than you can deal with it.
100%. And I know that people like to have, when you go into the, you go, I want to approve everything.
Right.
When you start to approve everything, you're not going to approve everything because it's too much. You spend your entire day going, here's an email, here's a system. Like, it really truly becomes white noise. Then you have someone following up going, hey, this is important for payroll, or hey, this is important for, this and that.
And I heard you say very clearly that you were able to design both processes and reports and get things out to people in relatively quick time. And I certainly understanding that some of those things are things that Workuments themselves would have to do for you, but they're quick on the turnaround, which I liked about that. But really, when you talk about the minimal staffing and the usage of the processes and really kind of building it and then launching something with the great success that you did have, that's a huge changeover in what normally we're seeing today, where you've got a fairly large kind of a quasi technical staff working with the vendor to move the data from point A to B and get it into the places and check out the processes and set up the workflows. And I mean, it's not an inconsequential thing. And it sounds like you found some very good advantages in working with Workuments through that process. So
Correct.
I'm going to ask a magic question, and Joe, please, I will apologize to you in advance. How was it in the pricing situation? How did that look with regard to others that you've seen, or maybe even what you're seeing from Workday? I'm just kind of curious about it. Maybe not exacting, but maybe kind of a general, thumb rule of thumb: better, more expensive, less expensive. And I would say the system itself and the implementation. So the change orders that you may have had to ask of Workuments. How did that relatively work in your mind in terms of good, bad, or worse?
They were competitive, and for us, I mean, again, when we went, you have to remember, we went from nothing to Workuments. We went from paper to Workuments, but to go to, I mean, it's costing us a lot more money to go to Workday.
Mm-hmm.
But we also got rid of ADP. We're doing payroll through, Workday as well.
Gotcha. That has its own set of connotations in its own right. I'll leave it alone.
100%.
No, that's an interesting question. So when you wanted to add things or make changes, how did we handle that as far as charging you?
I mean, we were not charged for anything that, like, if we wanted to make changes from something to something, we were not charged. Like, if we said, hey, in the logbook, we want to be able to do this, they just did it. I think the very few things that we were charged for is when we had to get the integration into another system done.
Mm-hmm.
Where, we had to, they integrated into our POS system. They integrated into our hot schedule system. So again, they were able to integrate into other systems for us. And that, I think, right, Joe, was the only time we were ever charged. And it wasn't like we weren't like, oh my gosh, we can't do this.
We have to postpone until we can make a profit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, and I thank you, Joe, for asking that particular question, because again, many of us in the audience have been doing this for a long, long time with the, shall we say, the vendor population. And really what I'm trying to point out in this Technology Review Council is that Workuments represents a very different model of implementation, pricing, approach. It does put a little bit more of an onus on you as the user, but if you know what you need to have done, and I would say that many CHROs know, hey, I know we need to get this stuff done. That's the stuff, and you shouldn't have to worry about the technology to do it. So when you told us about the bartender store and your ability to pop a video out here and do this for a workflow and inform the manager, those are things that show a great deal of flexibility in the product. And that's, so I'm gonna ask the audience right now. You guys have been very studiously quiet. I haven't seen any chat. So does anyone have any particular questions they'd like to ask either Angela or Joe? or some combination thereof. I certainly would like to talk a little bit about the perspective when you talk about the staffing, the kinds of people you had on your project. I'll ask that a little bit, but let me see. Are there any questions out there that anybody would like to post in the chat or just open up a mic? I always say that when in the absence of questions, then I'll keep asking. So let's explore a little bit about the staffing. As you said, you had 4 people, yourself kind of driving both the general oversight, the delivery to the rest of the organization. What other kinds of folks did you have in place there to help you?
We had the VP of HR and recruiting. We had myself. We had the director of compliance. We were the main 3 people that really ran this project. We did have a select few of general managers that when we came across, because we were able to map this out of what we wanted. We would say, hey, what would make sense to you as a general manager for this business process or for, these things. So we did get feedback, but it was just, the 3 of us who truly ran the integration and the building of the system, for a 2010 location group. We have 10 different, FEIN numbers, 2,000 employees. It was, and all sorts of kinds of employees. So it was really.
Hey, this is Joe. When you started though, didn't you had that HR consulting firm too, right? The one that was helping with gather requirements?
Correct. And we fed those, yeah, they were the ones that went out and said, this is what they kind of need from a list that we gave them. So yes, you're right. We did have, that's how we originally came to the 3, the final 3 to look at.
Mm-hmm. And what strikes me, and again, I keep wanting to draw parallels to what we see as the more traditional perspective. 9 times out of 10, if you're lucky enough, you have a project team dedicated to an implementation of this nature. So someone like yourself, director of compliance, and whatever else may be, are not part of the project team. They are the users. There's the one you've got to go borrow the time because they've got day jobs. And it sounds like you were able to put this system in place with a minimal amount of, shall we say, staffing, but at the highest levels to make decisions quickly, which I see that as a distinct advantage of what we do today in the traditional implementation. I'm asking you, I'm asking Joe, but I'm also trying to prod the audience out there to say, no, if you're not, whatever you're smoking, stop smoking it. Or you're right on the money that this is very different than what we normally do. So I'm curious. Angela, what's your perspective on that? I mean, did you feel that you were lacking anything in there?
Well, see, our corporate team consisted at the time of, I think like 10, 12 people. But now, we didn't have a director of IT. We didn't have an in-house, IT group. Actually, what's really funny at the time is I was actually an accounting manager when we were going to go to this system. And I'd always been in HR and, HRIS stuff, but I never had the role. I was able to do this and my 1 location accounting job with 2 other people because Workuments does the heavy lifting. And again, you're also not starting from scratch because I keep hearing you say, start building from scratch, but Workuments has a base. Like they're not saying, hey, you need to tell us we need first name, last name. So it's not like it's from scratch. They have a system to use. You can just configure it to what you need or what you want.
Yeah, that's a very good point. My apologies. You're right. It's not necessarily a blank canvas, but it has a lot of shall we say tools that allows you to make it yours.
Correct. So when we started, like our first thing is we just uploaded the employee, because again, we came from we didn't have anything. So we uploaded employee data to make sure that was correct, and then made sure the file that went from Workuments to ADP worked. That was our number 1 goal, and that went up and running rather quickly once they had that file in place, because any HR changes in Workuments had to get to payroll. Then we had to make sure our point of sale system, our time and attendance system integrated until we started doing time and attendance in Workuments and had that TRA where at that point, the only thing we were uploading into ADP were these 2 files, to pay employees. And then everything else was just added over time. It had not everything else. We had recruiting right at the beginning, so we had it on board. We had to, once we went to the EI-9, instead of doing paper I-9s, we had the link integrated into the onboarding where you would click it and it would take you to another site to get the EI-9 done. And then E-Verify we went to, so that was able to be integrated into the system very quickly. So again, we kind of evolved. We had the basis, and then we just kind of evolved into what we needed.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things we try to do, maybe it's a little unique, I don't know. We really try to understand the business. Okay, so what we're doing is when we're setting this up or getting the requirements, we really try to understand what's going on and why and things like that. And so it makes it easier to implement, makes their life easier in the implementation. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
And it
And like I
also
say,
helps on the road when I'm sitting there going, I need this, and I have Sabre going, no, you don't. And I go, what? And he goes, you don't want this, you want this because of this, this, and this. And I go, oh my gosh, you know exactly what I need. There was plenty of times where I'm like, dang, like I should have thought of that. Because he understood what I needed for Clyde's and how with 10 different locations, how to make it easy and how to make sure I wasn't overcomplicated. Like they're vested in what you are doing.
right.
Because again,
Well,
they don't have to make changes later. So it was great.
yeah, we find quite often that vendors know how to build their system because they wrote it, but it's a generic approach to the implementation, and they think we hear HR is HR, payroll is payroll, but each business has its nuances. As you say, you've got hourly employees, you've got certifications and that. You have to do background checks. There's a lot of things about that are very particular to your business. To have a vendor that is also kind of a pseudo consulting firm around learning who you are and what you need, and then applying that to the system. Like I say, these are in my mind, truly the vast differences in what Workuments represents in its approach, and not just features and function, but approach to that of many of the other vendors who we deal with. So that's why I'm kind of drawing out, and I'm loving. Literally, Angela, you're a great client. My question to you: had you stayed with Workuments, are there things that you think you would have asked them to do, not necessarily just process-wise, but fairly fundamental things like maybe putting some kind of a self-service situation where people could even have, with let's say chatbots and things of that nature, where you're really offloading the work from HR directly to the people, saying, hey, you've got a question, ask a chatbot, get an answer, do what you need to do.
Yeah, I mean, what's crazy, I mean, that's a great question. Right before, I don't know, maybe 6 months before we left, I was, Joe and I were talking, and we were terming a manager, and I can't remember how it came up, but I was talking, when we term someone, we have to make sure we collect their keys, if they were given a computer, if they had chefs, if they have knives that were the company's. So Joe quickly came up with an asset tracker that we unfortunately never were able to use. I'm sad by this, but we were able to say, hey, he made it so that if a manager was hired, I could go in and go, we gave Angela a computer, we gave her a set of keys, we gave her a parking pass, we gave her, I don't know what else I would need, a new car.
Yeah.
And then when I was terminated, you could make it so this was sent to the GM before termination, that, hey, this is what this employee has. Please make sure you collect, before we pay out the final payment. So that was just one thing.
That actually avoids having to have an integration with an asset management, like your supplies and food and all the stuff you're doing in the hospitality side. You don't have to put all that stuff over there. It's in your HR system, where, in a sense, there's an argument about where it belongs, but I'll tell you, it sure is a lot easier to have it in the HR system when they terminate.
But it's also, it makes sense in the HR system because you can have it so when I say, I'm giving Bob these 5 things, I can have Bob sign off on the fact that he accepted them. So there's no, well, you didn't give me that. You're able to have someone acknowledge that they did receive these things. And then you have someone acknowledge that they were given back to us. So it's a great way. There's no, well, so-and-so gave it to so-and-so who gave it to so-and-so. It is, you check it out, just like a library book. You check this out and someone needs to check it back in, and it makes people responsible for this. Because again, like our parking cards are $35 if we want to replace them. I know that sounds like not a lot of money, but over time, you know, to have to replace them over and over and over again for keys. If someone walks out with keys, you know, it's a $7,000 to $15,000 thing that we have to fix. We have to get the locks changed.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
you can't have someone have access to that. So this is just a great way to say, hey, no, like we have you signing off on the keys and we don't have a signature that you turn them in. You know, so that we weren't able to use. You know, and I think.
Yeah. I was going to say, how long were you able to use Workuments before you had to move over to Workday? I'm just curious about that because I have a question hanging in the back.
Of course, we were with them for 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, it's more than sufficient to get used to it. So my question then is, how would your managers today compare to where you were with Workuments and where you are today with Workday? What do you think they would say? What are the good things and what are the things they really miss?
I think right now, if you ask them, they would go, I'm really frustrated that I can't find phone numbers of employees. I'm very frustrated I can't see, because again, you know, if you're a manager, say you want to see someone who's working the shift with you, you can't. You're in a box and you can't get out of that box. There's no, you know, there's nothing I can do to give them access to what they need. You know, there are some assistant general managers or executive sous chefs who lost the ability to help their GM and, you know, executive chef keep track of employees, help with PTO. You know, right now, if an employee takes, you know, time off and the manager is on vacation or doesn't approve it, that employee doesn't get paid. But there's no one else that can approve it, which is it's very difficult with the business process. So we've had a lot of difficulty there. The logbook, I know they miss. I mean, we were able to have the logbook emailed to us every morning in a beautiful, like it shrank to your screen to where you could read it, and we don't have that anymore. I mean, just the ease of it, you know, being able to get the employees logged in and kind of go through the onboarding process. If they had help, again, you know, that was something they could reach out to me for, and I was able to help them. You know, it was a much more easy, user-friendly system.
I love it. So we're kind of drawing up on the hour here. Let me ask one more time to the audience. If you have any questions, now's the time to ask it. And while we're waiting, and I'm keeping an eye on the chat, although please open up your mic if you just want to ask a question. So Angela, I'll kind of pose it to you. In summing it up, and then Joe, I'll certainly give you the opportunity as well. If you had your druthers and you wanted to go back, would you go back to Workuments? That's a loaded question.
No, I mean, it's not a loaded question. I would. I feel like the functionality in Workuments, again, it was a system that we were able to build, but again, it still was a system. It's not like they had a structure there. But my ability to be able to truly, you know, every person wants to create this, you know, I was able to have an idea and go, I would like to do this, and roll it out to my team and have them go, this is such a great idea. This is wonderful. To be able to, you know, sit and strategize with people, what do we need? What could help our managers? What could help our employees? How do we make the system better? To have that buy-in, to be able to have control over what you want from a system, you know, is missed. The TRAs, the logbook, the asset tracker. You know, there's a lot of things that were unique to our company that we were able to use, and we were able to grow with the times. You know, when you get to compliance, you know, anyone in HR knows that there's compliance issues that are thrown at you. there's laws that are thrown at you. I mean, you have to be able to react quickly, and losing that ability to be able to react quickly was not good. I mean, 4 months, almost 5 months to get a piece of paper to our employees to sign when I was used to be able to do it within an hour is a big difference.
Oh, yes.
For compliance reasons, to have something on your shoulder that you're going, this isn't out yet, that's a big thing on me that I'm losing sleep over, that, they're going to come to me saying, why isn't this put out? Just being able to forward think and really move the company to that. I mean, I miss that. But right now I feel like I'm just trying to learn a system that we have to fit to. Again, it's a big thing of configuring and customization. It's a huge difference. Do you want to be able to paint a box, or do you want to be able to be any shape you want? And I know that it's a very different approach. And I know that it's, it doesn't seem real. I can completely understand that, but it was. I had the ability to truly make a difference, and to have employees have a, experience in Workuments that it was easy. To have managers go, hey, this would be great, and get it to them right away. To be able to set up reports of my own that could be sent out daily. I mean, I could send out a report Wednesday night, Thursday morning, and Sunday night. I could, to be able to get managers and chefs what they needed. It was a good feeling. It was a great feeling to be able to help. And I feel like I am not as helpful anymore. I'm more of just
You're back to the old role of HR reacting.
Yeah, I'm more reacting right now. So I don't have that feeling. I don't have that feeling. Of course, I'm super helpful. I do with Workday. I do HR and payroll, and I mean, my job is intense. I haven't lost that. I feel like I'm not able to use my creativity as much anymore. Which in HR, maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing. But it was great to be able to go. I can think outside the box and have a call with Joe or Sabre and go, this is what I think would be really cool, and to be able to go back and forth to try to figure out if something would work. How could we? And it was never if it could work. It was always met with, how can we do this? How can we get this done? And that was pretty impressive.
Again, like I said, I'd love to have had a couple of clients like you as well. As a consultant. Joe, if you'd like to wrap that up, we're very close to the end of the hour. And Angela, if I don't get a chance, I want to thank you very, very much for taking your time and giving us what I think to be an exceedingly good testimonial about the difference of the Workuments world. So Joe, I'll leave it to your discretion.
Get them to Joe or get them to me. If anyone has any follow-up questions that just you didn't answer now, I'm here.
Yep. And I will tell you that if anyone comes back to me later, and we do have people who will listen to the recording that weren't able to make it today, I'll make sure that they know me. They know how to find me, and I can find Joe. So again, so Joe, please feel free to kind of wrap us up on this. And again, thank you all very much out there, and we'll be doing this again.
Yeah, I want to thank Angela for taking her time. I mean, she's not even our customer anymore, and I just really appreciate it. And so I hope you guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to message us. I think everybody's got Nick's contact me. Sabri's on here. He's our technical guru. So anything we can do, please let us know.
We'll do. All right, again. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Not to say we'd love to work with you guys.
I think I'm hoping that we hear a lot of people asking the questions, how do I get to Joe and Nick? So, all righty. Well, again, thank you all very, very much. And we'll see you again probably 2 weeks down the road here. I've got a little hiatus called a vacation somewhere in here. So I'm going to try to do that. So everyone stay well. And Angela, a very excellent pleasure to meet you.
Thanks.
All right, everyone. Bye-bye. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.